For almost a year, Vincent Moretti ruled his empire with iron precision, until the night his invisible housekeeper walked past him in a red dress. In that single devastating moment, the most dangerous man in the city realized he'd been blind to the one woman who could unravel him completely. When she left for a date with another man, Vincent did something he'd never done before. He followed. What happened next would shatter every rule he'd built his life upon and force them both to choose between safety and something far more dangerous: truth. If you want to see how a crime king falls and an invisible woman rises, stay until the end. And don't forget to hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far Lena and Vincent's story reaches across the world. Awesome. The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Vincent Moretti's penthouse like bullets against bulletproof glass. Insistent, relentless, futile. He stood in the darkness of his living room, a crystal tumbler of scotch balanced in one hand, watching the city lights blur and streak through the downpour. 43 floors below, Chicago moved through its Friday night rhythms, oblivious to the man who controlled so much of what happened in its shadows. Vincent took a slow sip, savoring the burn. The penthouse was silent except for the rain and the distant hum of the city. This was his favorite time, late evening, when the day's violence and negotiations were done, when he could stand alone in his fortress and feel the weight of his empire settle comfortably on his shoulders. He heard her before he saw her, the soft pad of footsteps on marble, the whisper of fabric, the careful, almost apologetic way she moved through space, as if trying not to disturb the very air around her. "Mr. Moretti." Her voice was quiet, respectful, nearly disappearing into the ambient sound of rain. "I finished the upstairs. I'll be heading out now if that's all right." Vincent didn't turn around. Fine. It was their standard exchange. Had been for the better part of a year. Lena Walsh came 3 times a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, arriving at 6 in the evening and leaving around 10. She cleaned what his daily maid service missed, organized his personal spaces, ensured his private world ran with the same ruthless efficiency he demanded of his business operations. He knew almost nothing about her, didn't need to. She was competent, discreet, and mercifully silent. In Vincent's world, those qualities were worth more than gold. "Have a good weekend, Mr. Moretti." "You too." He heard her footsteps retreat toward the private elevator, heard the soft chime as the doors opened. In 15 seconds she'd be gone, and he'd have the weekend to himself. Meetings with his lieutenants, a shipment to oversee, a problem in the South Side that needed his personal attention. Then he heard something that made him pause mid-sip. Heels. Not the soft-soled shoes she always wore while working. Actual heels, clicking against his marble floor with a rhythm that spoke of confidence, of intention, of visibility. Vincent turned and nearly dropped his glass. The woman standing by his elevator wasn't Lena Walsh. Couldn't be. Lena Walsh was invisible, a ghost in comfortable clothes and pulled-back hair who moved through his space like water, present but unnoticed. Lena Walsh had no shape, no color, no form that registered on his consciousness. This woman was devastating. The dress was red, not bright red, but deep crimson, the color of wine or blood in candlelight. It hugged curves Vincent hadn't known existed, falling just above her knees in a way that suggested elegance rather than provocation. Her dark hair, always trapped in a bun or ponytail, fell in soft waves past her shoulders. She'd done something to her face, makeup, he supposed, though he knew nothing about such things, that made her eyes seem larger, more luminous, framed by lashes that cast shadows on her cheekbones. She stood differently, too, shoulders back, chin raised, meeting his gaze directly for the first time in 11 months. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice had changed too, still quiet, but no longer apologetic. "I have plans tonight. I hope it's all right that I changed here. My apartment is across town, and I didn't have time." "You have plans." Vincent's voice came out harder than he'd intended, sharpened by something he couldn't identify. Lena blinked, clearly surprised by his tone. "Yes, just dinner. A date, actually." A date. The word hit Vincent's chest like a physical blow. He forced his face to remain impassive, even as something dark and unfamiliar uncoiled in his gut. "I wasn't aware you had a personal life." The words were out before he could stop them, cold and cutting. Color rose in Lena's cheeks, the first real emotion he'd ever seen her display. I do, actually. Not that it's ever been relevant to my work here. She was right, of course. What she did on her own time was none of his concern. He employed her to clean his home, not to exist solely for his convenience. So why did the thought of her sitting across a candlelit table from some other man make Vincent want to put his fist through the window? Who is he? The question escaped before his rational mind could intervene. Lena's eyes widened slightly. I'm sorry? The man you're meeting. Who is he? I don't think that's appropriate, Mr. Moretti. I employ you. I have a right to know who you're associating with. For security purposes. It was a weak excuse, and they both knew it. Lena worked for him, yes, but she had no access to sensitive information, no knowledge of his business operations. She cleaned his home. That was all. But Lena, to his surprise, didn't argue. Instead, she studied him with those newly visible eyes, and Vincent had the uncomfortable sensation of being seen for the first time. His name is David, she said finally. David Chen. He's an accountant. We met at a coffee shop 3 weeks ago. He seems nice, safe, normal. She emphasized the last word deliberately. This is our second date. Second date. Which meant there'd been a first. Which meant Vincent had been standing in this very penthouse, drinking scotch and reviewing spreadsheets, while this woman, this invisible woman, had been out in the world being courted by another man. Where are you going? Vincent's hand tightened on his glass. A restaurant in Lincoln Park, Italian place. He made reservations. What restaurant? Mr. Moretti? What? Restaurant. Lena's jaw tightened. For a moment, Vincent thought she might refuse to answer. Then she sighed and he saw her shoulders shift, not slumping in defeat, but settling into a kind of resigned determination. Giordano's, the one on Rush Street. We're meeting at 8:30. Vincent glanced at his watch. 8:15. If she left now, she'd barely make it. You should go, he said, his voice carefully neutral. You'll be late. Something flickered across Lena's face. Disappointment, maybe, or relief. She nodded, turned toward the elevator. Lena. She paused, hand on the elevator call button, looking back at him over her shoulder. The red dress caught the light, and Vincent felt that unfamiliar sensation twist deeper in his chest. Be careful, he said. Her expression softened slightly. It's just dinner, Mr. Moretti. Be careful anyway. The elevator doors closed on her confused expression, and Vincent was alone again in his penthouse. He stood motionless for 30 seconds, listening to the rain, feeling the scotch burn in his throat. Then he pulled out his phone and called Tommy Russo, his head of security. Boss? I need you to put a tail on someone. Now. Who? Lena Walsh. My housekeeper. She's heading to Giordano's on Rush Street, meeting someone there at 8:30. I want eyes on her the entire time. Discreet. She doesn't know. There was a pause. Everything okay, boss? Just do it, Tommy. You got it. Vincent ended the call and returned to the window, but the city lights held no appeal now. He tried to focus on the weekend's business, the shipment, the South Side problem, the meeting with the Italians on Sunday. His mind refused to cooperate. Instead, he kept seeing red fabric and soft waves of dark hair, kept hearing that new voice, still quiet, but no longer invisible, kept imagining her sitting across from David Chen, accountant, safe and normal, smiling at his jokes, letting him order wine, perhaps letting him reach across the table to touch her hand. Vincent poured another scotch and told himself he was being ridiculous. Lena Walsh was his housekeeper. Nothing more. What she did, who she saw, how she dressed, none of it mattered. Except it did. For 11 months, she'd existed in his peripheral vision, present but unnoticed, necessary but unremarkable. She'd been part of the landscape of his life, like the marble floors or the bulletproof windows. Useful, reliable, invisible. Now he couldn't stop seeing her. His phone buzzed. Tommy. She just arrived, boss. Met the guy outside. They went in together. Description? Asian male, early 30s, 5'10", average build, wearing a button-down and khakis. Looks like an accountant. Stay on them. Boss, you want me to go inside? Vincent hesitated. Having Tommy follow Lena to the restaurant was one thing, standard security protocol, he told himself, even if he'd never done it before. Having him actually enter the restaurant, observe her date, report back on her conversations. No, Vincent said. Just keep watch outside. Let me know when she leaves. You got it. Vincent pocketed his phone and stared at his reflection in the dark window. A stranger looked back at him, face hard, eyes dangerous, jaw tight with an emotion he refused to name. Jealousy was for weak men, for men who didn't have control. Vincent Moretti had built an empire on control. Control of his emotions, his reactions, his world. He didn't get jealous, didn't get possessive, didn't care what his employees did on their own time. So why was he already reaching for his car keys? The drive to Rush Street took 15 minutes. Vincent told himself he was just checking on a security matter, ensuring his housekeeper was safe. It had nothing to do with the way that red dress had made his chest tight, or the way her eyes had met his without flinching. He parked across the street from Giordano's, in a spot that gave him a clear view of the restaurant's front windows. His Mercedes was dark, tinted, anonymous. No one would notice him sitting here in the rain. Tommy materialized beside the passenger window, making Vincent jump slightly, which annoyed him because he never jumped. Jesus, Tommy. Sorry, boss. Tommy slid into the passenger seat, shaking rain from his jacket. Didn't expect to see you here. Just wanted to check the situation myself. Tommy was smart enough not to comment on the lie. Instead, he gestured toward the restaurant. They're at a table by the window, far left. You can see them from here if you look careful. Vincent looked. The restaurant was warm and golden, full of Friday night couples and families. He spotted Lena immediately. The red dress drew his eye like a beacon. She sat across from David Chen, accountant, safe and normal. They were talking. She was smiling. Vincent's hand tightened on the steering wheel. He seems all right, Tommy offered. Ran a quick background, clean record, works for a mid-sized firm downtown, never been arrested, no flags. Good. They sat in silence, watching the rain stream down the windshield. Vincent told himself to start the car and leave. This was insane, pathetic. He was Vincent Moretti, for God's sake. He didn't sit in cars spying on his housekeeper's dinner dates. She looks different tonight, Tommy said quietly. Vincent's jaw tightened. She does. Never really noticed her before, you know. She's always just there, doing her job. Real quiet. But tonight, Tommy trailed off, then seemed to catch himself. Sorry, boss, didn't mean to overstep. You're not wrong. Another silence. Vincent watched Lena laugh at something David said. The sound didn't carry through the rain and glass, but he could see it in the way her shoulders shook slightly, the way her hand came up to cover her mouth. How long have I employed her? Vincent asked. About 11 months. Started last June, I think, right after Mrs. Morrison retired. 11 months, nearly a year of her moving through his space 3 times a week, a year of barely registering her existence. Now, after 10 minutes in a red dress, he couldn't think about anything else. Boss, can I say something? No. I'm going to say it anyway. Tommy shifted in his seat. I've worked for you for 8 years, never seen you like this about a woman. I'm not like anything. I'm ensuring employee safety. Right. That's why we're sitting in the rain watching her eat breadsticks. Vincent shot him a look that would have made most men flinch. Tommy just raised his eyebrows. I'm serious, boss. You've never once asked about any woman's personal life. Hell, you've dated models and lawyers and that one Russian ballet dancer, and you never looked at any of them the way you're looking at that restaurant right now. You're out of line. Maybe, but I'm also right. Vincent wanted to argue, wanted to tell Tommy he was seeing things that weren't there. But something stopped him. Maybe the honesty in Tommy's voice, or maybe the uncomfortable truth that Vincent could feel settling in his chest like a stone. He had noticed Lena before tonight, not consciously, not deliberately. But somewhere in the back of his mind, some part of him had been tracking her presence for months. The way she hummed softly while she worked, thinking no one could hear. The way she always left his coffee table books arranged at slightly different angles, as if she'd been reading them. The way she sometimes paused by his windows to look at the city, her expression unguarded and wistful. He'd noticed. He just hadn't let himself acknowledge it. Until tonight. Until the red dress. Until another man had looked at her and seen what Vincent had been too blind or too careful to see. "They're getting the check," Tommy said. Vincent's attention snapped back to the restaurant. David was pulling out his wallet, waving away Lena's attempt to contribute. Gentlemanly. Polite. Vincent hated him. "What time is it?" 10:15. Guess they're wrapping up early. They watched David help Lena with her coat, a simple black jacket that covered the red dress. They stood, made their way toward the exit. "You want me to follow them?" Tommy asked. "Where'd he park?" "Street parking, 2 blocks north." Vincent watched them emerge from the restaurant into the rain. David opened an umbrella, held it over Lena's head. They started walking north, close together under the umbrella's shelter. "Boss?" Vincent was already opening his door. "Stay with the car." "What are you doing?" "Making sure she gets home safe." "Boss, I really don't think—" But Vincent was already out, rain immediately soaking through his shirt. He didn't care. He moved across the street, keeping to the shadows, his years of careful observation making him nearly invisible despite his size. He followed them 2 blocks, watched David's hand hover near Lena's lower back without quite touching, watched them stop beside a modest Honda Civic, watched David fumble with his keys, clearly nervous. "I had a really nice time," David said. His voice carried through the rain. "I know we only just met, but I feel like we really connected, you know?" "I had a nice time too." Lena's voice was warm but careful. "I'd really like to see you again. Maybe next weekend? There's this great jazz club in Wicker Park." "David." Lena's tone shifted, became gentler. "You're really sweet, and you're exactly the kind of guy I should be dating." Vincent heard the but before she said it. Apparently, so did David. "But you're not interested." David's shoulders slumped. "Is it something I did? I know I'm not the most exciting guy. I talk too much about work, and I probably shouldn't have ordered for you without asking. That was presumptuous." "You didn't do anything wrong," Lena said. "Really, you're great. You're just not what you're looking for." "I'm sorry." David was quiet for a moment, rain drumming on the umbrella. Then he smiled, sad but genuine. "Can't say I'm surprised. You're way out of my league anyway. I knew it when you walked into that coffee shop, but I figured, what the hell, right? Shoot your shot." "You should keep shooting," Lena said. "Some woman is going to be very lucky to have you." "Just not you. Just not me." David nodded, accepting it with more grace than Vincent would have expected. "Can I at least drive you home? It's pouring. I can catch a cab." "Lena, come on! Let me at least do that much." She hesitated, and Vincent found himself tensing, ready to— What? Step out of the shadows? Reveal that he'd followed her here like some obsessed stalker? Demand she accept a ride from him instead? "Okay," Lena said. "Thank you." They got into the Civic. Vincent stood in the rain, watching the taillights disappear into traffic. His shirt was plastered to his skin. His hair dripped water into his eyes. He felt like an idiot. And yet, beneath the embarrassment, beneath the cold rain and common sense, he felt something else. Relief. She'd turned him down. David Chen, safe and normal, the kind of man any reasonable woman would be lucky to have. She'd turned him down. Vincent pulled out his phone and called Tommy. "Follow them. Text me the address where he drops her off." "Boss?" "Do it." He walked back to his car, feeling the rain soak through to his skin, got behind the wheel, sat there dripping on the leather seats, not caring. His phone buzzed 15 minutes later. Address, 2847 W, Palmer Street, Apt 3B. Working class neighborhood, secure building, she got out safe. He drove away after watching her get inside. Vincent stared at the address. He'd never asked where Lena lived, had never thought to ask. She existed in his penthouse and nowhere else, or so he'd believed. Now he had her address burning in his phone screen. Now he knew she lived in a working-class neighborhood, probably in a small apartment, probably struggling to make rent on what he paid her for 15 hours a week. Now he knew she turned down nice, normal men because they weren't what she was looking for. Now he knew what she looked like in a red dress, and he knew he'd never be able to unsee it. Vincent started his car and headed home. The weekend's business waited. The shipment, the South Side problem, the meeting with the Italians. His empire demanded his attention. But as he drove through the rain-soaked streets, all he could think about was the way Lena had stood in his penthouse, meeting his eyes without flinching. The way she'd transformed from invisible to unforgettable in the space of a heartbeat. The way she'd said, "I have plans," with a confidence he'd never heard before. And the way some deep, dark part of him, the part that had built an empire on taking what he wanted and destroying anyone who stood in his way, had whispered a single, undeniable truth. Mine. 1. Monday came like it always did, indifferent to Vincent's weekend turmoil. He'd spent Saturday focused on business, forcing himself not to think about red dresses or rejection or the address still saved in his phone. Sunday had been harder. The meeting with the Italians ran long, which should have occupied his mind completely, but he kept checking his watch, wondering what Lena was doing. Now it was Monday evening, and she'd be arriving any minute for her regular shift. Vincent paced his penthouse, telling himself to act normal. She was his housekeeper. That's all she'd ever been. Friday night had been an aberration, a moment of temporary insanity brought on by surprise and scotch. He would greet her professionally. She would clean. He would work in his office. Everything would return to the way it had been for 11 months. The elevator chimed. Vincent positioned himself at his desk, pretending to review contracts. He heard her footsteps, the soft-soled shoes again, the whisper of careful movement. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti." He looked up. She was invisible again. Or trying to be. Hair pulled back in a severe bun, shapeless gray shirt and black pants, no makeup, eyes downcast. But Vincent could see her now, could see the curve of her waist even under the shapeless clothes, could see the graceful line of her neck, could see the intelligence in her eyes, even when she kept them lowered. Friday night had ruined everything. "Lena." His voice came out rougher than intended. "How was your weekend?" She looked up, clearly surprised by the personal question. "It was fine. Quiet. Yours?" "Busy." An awkward silence stretched between them. Lena shifted her weight, uncomfortable under his gaze. "I should start upstairs," she said. "How was your date?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Lena's eyes widened slightly. "I'm sorry?" "Friday night, with David Chen. How did it go?" Color rose in her cheeks. "I don't think that's appropriate." "I know. You said that before." Vincent stood, moving around his desk. "I'm asking anyway." "Why?" "Good question. One he didn't have a reasonable answer for." "Because I want to know." Lena studied him with those newly visible eyes, and Vincent had the uncomfortable sensation of being evaluated, assessed, seen through. "It was fine," she said finally. "He was nice. We're not seeing each other again." Something in Vincent's chest loosened. "Why not?" "That's definitely not appropriate, Mr. Moretti." "Vincent." "What?" "Call me Vincent. You've worked for me for 11 months. I think we're past Mr. Moretti." "I don't think—" "Why aren't you seeing him again?" Lena's jaw tightened. "Because he's not what I'm looking for." "What are you looking for?" "I really need to start work." "What are you looking for, Lena?" She stared at him for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she set down her cleaning supplies and crossed her arms. "Why do you care?" "I don't." The lie tasted bitter. "Then why are you asking?" "Professional concern, employee welfare." "Bullshit." Vincent blinked. In 11 months, he'd never heard Lena curse, never heard her voice rise above a respectful murmur, never seen her stand her ground like this. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. You didn't care about my welfare for 11 months. You barely knew I existed. Then I showed up in a dress one time and suddenly you're interrogating me about my personal life?" She shook her head. "That's not professional concern. That's something else." "And what do you think it is?" "I don't know, but I'd like you to tell me." Vincent felt the familiar darkness uncurl in his chest, the part of him that took control, that dominated, that never showed weakness. He could shut this down, could remind her of her place, could turn this moment into something cold and final. Instead, he heard himself say, "I followed you." Lena went very still. "What?" "Friday night. I followed you to the restaurant. Sat outside in the rain and watched you have dinner with David Chen, accountant, safe and normal. The color drained from her face. Why would you do that? I don't know. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Lena took a step back, and Vincent saw something flicker across her expression. Not fear, exactly, but wariness. The look of someone reassessing a situation, recalculating risk. I should go, she said. Don't. Mr. Moretti. Vincent. And don't go, please. The please seemed to surprise her. Hell, it surprised him. Vincent Moretti didn't say please. Didn't ask. He commanded, and people obeyed. But Lena wasn't moving toward the elevator. Wasn't running. She just stood there, watching him, waiting. I didn't notice you, Vincent said. The words felt like they were being pulled from somewhere deep in his chest. For 11 months you were invisible to me, and then Friday night you weren't. And now I can't stop seeing you. That's not my fault. I know. I didn't do anything wrong. I know that too. Then why are you angry? I'm not angry at you. Vincent moved closer, saw her tense but hold her ground. I'm angry at myself. For being so goddamn blind. For wasting 11 months not seeing what was right in front of me. I'm your housekeeper. You're not supposed to see me. That's the point. Is it? Is that really what you want? To be invisible? Lena's breath caught. What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me. Since when? Since Friday night. Since that red dress. Since I sat in my car in the rain like a jealous idiot and watched another man make you smile. The admission hung between them, raw and honest. Lena's expression shifted, surprise giving way to something more complicated. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. You don't know me, she said softly. I know. That's the problem. No, I mean, you really don't know me. You don't know where I'm from or what I like or what I dream about. You don't know my favorite food or my favorite color or what I do when I'm not here. You don't even know why I took this job. So tell me, why should I? Because I'm asking. Because I want to know. Because I'm standing here admitting that I've been an arrogant, blind fool and I'm trying to do better. Lena shook her head, and Vincent saw something that looked like sadness cross her face. You don't want to know me, Vincent. You want to know me. There's a difference. What does that mean? It means you saw me in a dress, and suddenly I became interesting, became visible. But you didn't see me for 11 months when I was cleaning your kitchen, or organizing your books, or watering your plants. You didn't care about me then. You're right. The admission hurt, but it was true. I didn't. I should have. But I didn't. So why should I believe this is real? Why should I believe you actually care about who I am, and not just who you saw on Friday night? It was a fair question, a good question. Vincent had no answer that didn't sound hollow or self-serving. So instead of answering, he asked, why did you turn him down? David, why aren't you seeing him again? Lena's eyes met his, and for the first time, Vincent saw something raw in them, something vulnerable. Because he was looking at me the way I've been looking at you for 11 months, she said quietly. Like I was something special, something precious. And I couldn't bear it, knowing I didn't feel the same way. Knowing I was thinking about someone else the whole time. The world narrowed to the space between them. Vincent's heart hammered against his ribs. Who were you thinking about? Lena laughed, but it was bitter. Are you really that dense? Or are you just cruel? Lena, I've been in love with you since August. The words tumbled out like a confession, angry and hurt. Since the night you came home early and found me reading one of your books. And instead of firing me, you asked what I thought of it. Since you actually listened to my answer. Since you told me I could borrow any book I wanted, and you meant it. Vincent stared at her, stunned. You never said anything. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Mr. Moretti, I know I'm just the help, but I've been falling for you while I dust your furniture. You barely knew I existed. You would have fired me. Or worse, you would have been polite about it. I wouldn't have. Yes, you would have. Because I'm your employee, and you're Vincent Moretti, and that's how the world works. She grabbed her cleaning supplies, started toward the elevator. I should go. I asked you to stay, and I'm leaving anyway. Because this conversation, it's too late. You don't get to notice me now. You don't get to follow me on dates and ask me personal questions and pretend you care. You had 11 months. I care now. She jabbed the elevator button. No, you don't. You care about the idea of me, the version of me in that red dress. But that's not who I am every day. That's not who I was for 11 months while you looked right through me. The elevator doors opened. Lena stepped inside. Lena, wait. I'll finish out the week, she said. But after Friday, I'm done. Find someone else to clean your penthouse. The doors closed on her determined expression, and Vincent was alone again. But this time, the silence wasn't comfortable. It was suffocating. He'd spent 11 months not seeing her, 3 days seeing nothing but her. And now she was gone. Vincent walked to the window, pressed his palm against the cold glass. 43 floors below, Chicago moved through its Monday rhythms, indifferent to the fact that Vincent Moretti, who always got what he wanted, had just lost something he hadn't known he needed. His phone buzzed. Tommy. Everything okay, boss? Heard she left early. Of course Tommy had noticed. Tommy noticed everything. Vincent typed back. Fine. Stand down on the security detail. You sure? Yes. He pocketed his phone and stood at the window until the city lights blurred. Not from rain this time, from the unfamiliar burn behind his eyes. He'd built an empire on control, on strategy, on knowing what he wanted and taking it without hesitation. But he'd never wanted someone who had every right to walk away, who had already walked away. And Vincent Moretti, for the first time in his carefully controlled life, had absolutely no idea what to do about it. The next 48 hours were hell. Vincent went through the motions of running his empire, meetings with suppliers, negotiations with rivals, decisions about territories and shipments and money. His lieutenants reported problems. He solved them. The machine kept running because Vincent Moretti never let personal issues interfere with business. But at night, alone in his penthouse, he stood at the window and replayed every moment of that conversation, every word Lena had said, every accusation he couldn't deny. I've been in love with you since August. The words haunted him, not because they were unwelcome, but because they revealed a truth he'd been too blind to see. She'd been there all along, not invisible, never invisible. He'd just chosen not to look. Wednesday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Vincent positioned himself in his office, pretending to work, listening for the elevator chime that would announce her arrival. 6 o'clock came and went. No Lena. 6:30. Nothing. At 7, Vincent called her number, the one he'd gotten from her employment file, never used in 11 months. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. You've reached Lena Walsh. Please leave a message. He ended the call without speaking, tried again 10 minutes later, same result. At 7:30, his phone rang. Tommy. Boss, she's not coming. Vincent's hand tightened on the phone. How do you know? Because I'm sitting outside her building, and she just left with a suitcase. Got into a cab heading toward O'Hare. You're watching her? I told you to stand down. You told me to stand down on the detail. Didn't say I couldn't keep an eye out on my own time. Tommy paused. She's running, boss. Vincent was already moving toward the elevator, grabbing his keys. Don't lose her. Already following the cab, but boss, if she's going to the airport, I know, stay on her. I'm on my way. The drive to O'Hare took 35 minutes in evening traffic. Vincent spent every second of it calling Lena's phone, each unanswered ring twisting the knot in his chest tighter. Tommy sent updates. She'd checked in at the United counter, gone through security, was sitting at gate B17. Vincent parked illegally and ran. He made it through security in record time. Money and the right connections opened doors, even at airports. Tommy had texted the gate number 3 times, as if Vincent might forget. B17, B17, B17. He found her sitting alone near the window, watching planes take off into the dark sky. She'd changed clothes since Monday, jeans and a sweater, her hair down, a leather jacket draped over her lap. The suitcase sat beside her, small and worn. She looked up as he approached, and her expression cycled through surprise, resignation, and something that might have been anger. "You've got to be kidding me," she said. Vincent stopped a few feet away, suddenly aware that he was breathing hard, that his shirt was untucked, that he looked like a man who'd just run through an airport like his life depended on it. "Where are you going?" "Away. That's all you need to know. You said you'd finish out the week." "I changed my mind." She turned back to the window. "I don't owe you anything, Vincent, not even a resignation notice." "I know." "Then why are you here?" Good question. Vincent had asked himself the same thing during the drive over, had told himself he was being irrational, that Lena Walsh had every right to quit, to leave, to get on a plane and disappear from his life. But the thought of her vanishing, of never seeing her again, never hearing her voice, never having the chance to prove that this wasn't about a red dress or a moment of jealous insanity, had sent him running through an airport like a desperate man. Because that's what he was, desperate. "I'm here because I need to talk to you. We talked on Monday. I believe I made myself clear." "You did, and you were right, about all of it." That got her attention. She looked up, eyes wary. "What?" Vincent sat down in the chair beside her, ignoring the way she tensed. "You were right. I didn't see you for 11 months. I treated you like furniture, like you didn't matter. And when I finally noticed you, it was for all the wrong reasons. I'm aware. But you were wrong about one thing." "And what's that?" "You said I don't know you, that I only care about the version of you in that red dress." Vincent turned to face her fully. "You're right that I don't know you, but I want to, not the fantasy version. The real version. The woman who's been in my home 3 times a week for 11 months. The woman who reads my books and rearranges my coffee table. The woman who's apparently been in love with me since August." Color flooded Lena's cheeks. "I shouldn't have said that." "Why not? It's true, isn't it?" "That doesn't mean I should have said it. It's embarrassing. It's pathetic. It's honest." Vincent reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. She didn't move. "And it's the bravest thing anyone said to me in years." Lena stared at their joined hands. "What do you want from me, Vincent?" "A chance." "A chance to what?" "To know you. To prove that this isn't about a dress or a moment of jealousy. To show you that I can see you now and I'm not going to stop seeing you." "That's not enough." The words hit harder than Vincent expected. "What?" Lena pulled her hand back gently. "You being able to see me now, that's not enough. I've spent my whole life being invisible to people who should have noticed me. My parents, my teachers, men I've dated. You. And I'm done accepting scraps of attention from people who only notice me when it's convenient." "This isn't scraps, isn't it?" Her voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby travelers. She lowered it, but the intensity remained. "You ignored me for 11 months. Then you saw me in a dress and suddenly I'm worth chasing through an airport? How is that not scraps?" "Because it's not about the dress. It was never about the dress." "Then what was it about?" Vincent struggled to find words for something he barely understood himself. "It was about you being brave enough to let yourself be seen, about you walking out of that elevator like you owned the world, about realizing that you'd been there all along, and I'd been too much of a coward to admit what that meant." "What does it mean?" "That I'm an idiot, that I've wasted 11 months, that I'm standing in an airport trying to convince the most remarkable woman I've ever met not to get on a plane and disappear from my life." Lena's eyes softened slightly, but her jaw remained set. "You don't know that I'm remarkable. You don't know anything about me. Then tell me, right now. Tell me everything." "Vincent, you said I don't know your favorite food, or your favorite color, or what you dream about. So tell me. I'm asking. I'm listening. I'm here." A voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to begin boarding for United Flight 2847 to Seattle. We'll start with our first-class passengers and anyone needing special assistance." Lena glanced at her boarding pass. First class. Of course, she'd probably spent most of her savings on this last-minute escape. "That's my flight," she said. "Don't get on it." "Why shouldn't I?" "Because running away won't change the fact that you love me. And it won't change the fact that I'm an idiot who's finally waking up." "You don't love me back, Vincent. You barely know me." "You're right. I don't know you, not yet. But I want to. And I think I could. Love you, I mean, if you give me the chance. Lena stood, grabbed her suitcase. That's not good enough. Vincent stood too, blocking her path to the gate. Not physically, he'd never trap her, but making her look at him, making her see the truth in his eyes. What would be good enough? Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. I need you to have noticed me in September, in October, in November. I need you to have seen me before I put on that dress. Her voice cracked slightly. But you can't give me that. No one can. So I'm getting on this plane and I'm starting over somewhere that no one knows me, somewhere I can be visible from the start. You're visible to me now. Now isn't enough. She moved past him toward the gate. The agent was scanning boarding passes, waving passengers through. Vincent watched her walk away, everything in him screaming to chase her, to grab her, to make her stay. But he'd controlled people his whole life, made them do what he wanted through fear or money or force. He couldn't do that with Lena. Wouldn't do that with Lena. If she needed to go, he had to let her. She handed her boarding pass to the agent. The woman scanned it, smiled, handed it back. Lena was 3 steps from disappearing down the jetway when Vincent called out, August 14th. She stopped, turned back. What? August 14th. You said you've been in love with me since August. I think it was August 14th. A Tuesday. You came early because I'd texted that I needed the place cleaned before a business dinner. You were reading The Great Gatsby when I came home. I asked you what you thought, and you said it was tragic how people could be so close to happiness and still miss it completely. Lena's eyes widened. You remember that? I remember thinking that was a strange thing to say about that book. Most people talk about the American dream or the symbolism, but you talked about proximity to happiness, about how Gatsby and Daisy were both reaching for something that was right there, but they couldn't quite grasp it. Vincent took a step toward her. I remember that you cried when you talked about the ending, just a little. You tried to hide it, but I saw. I didn't think you noticed. I noticed? I just didn't let myself acknowledge it, because if I acknowledged it, I'd have to admit that my housekeeper had made me feel something, and I couldn't afford to feel things. Not in my line of work, not in my world. The gate agent cleared her throat. Miss, we need to close the door. Lena didn't move. What else do you remember? September 3rd. You reorganized my bookshelf, put all the philosophy together, all the history together, but you left my fiction mixed up. Hardcovers with paperbacks, classics with modern stuff. When I asked why, you said stories shouldn't be organized by format. They should be organized by how they make you feel. You thought that was stupid. I thought it was beautiful, impractical and inefficient and completely beautiful. Miss? The agent again, more insistent. October 27th, Vincent continued, moving closer. You were watering the plants by the window, and you started humming. I don't know what song it was, but it was sad, melancholy. When you realized I was there, you stopped and apologized, said you didn't mean to disturb me. You told me it was fine. I wanted to tell you not to stop, that it was the most honest sound I'd heard in months, that my penthouse felt more like a home when you were humming than it ever had when it was silent. Lena's hand clutched her boarding pass so tightly it was wrinkling. Why didn't you say anything? Because I'm a coward. Because it was easier to pretend you were invisible than to admit that you were the most visible person in my life. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we really need to close. November 19th, Vincent said, and now he was close enough to see the tears gathering in Lena's eyes. You cut your hand on a broken glass. I heard you gasp from my office. By the time I got to the kitchen, you'd wrapped it in a towel and were apologizing for breaking my glass. Your hand was bleeding, and you were apologizing to me. It was stupid. I should have been more careful. I got the first aid kit, cleaned your cut, bandaged it. Your hand was shaking. I thought you'd fire me. I wanted to kiss you. The words hung in the air between them. The gate agent had stopped nagging. The few remaining passengers were watching openly now. Vincent didn't care. You wanted to kiss me? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. I wanted to kiss you, wanted to pull you close and tell you that you never had to apologize to me, that you could break every glass in my kitchen and I wouldn't care. But I didn't, because I'm Vincent Moretti, and Vincent Moretti doesn't fall for his housekeeper. But you did. Fall for me. I've been falling for you since August 14th. I was just too blind and stubborn to admit it until a red dress forced me to see the truth. A tear rolled down Lena's cheek. That's not fair. I know. You can't just show up here and say these things. I know. You can't just remember all these moments and expect me to forgive 11 months of being invisible. I know. Vincent reached up slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and wiped the tear from her cheek. But I'm asking anyway. I'm standing in an airport in front of strangers, begging you not to get on that plane. Begging you to give me a chance to prove that I see you now, that I'll keep seeing you, that I'll spend every day making up for the months I wasted being blind. Vincent, my favorite color is blue, not because I particularly care about colors, but because you always wear blue when you're tired. It's like you don't have the energy to choose anything else, so you reach for blue. And every time I see you in blue now, I know you've had a hard day, and I want to make it better. Lena let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. How do you know that? Because I've been watching you for 11 months without admitting I was watching. Because every detail I pretended not to notice has been cataloged in my brain, waiting for me to stop being an idiot long enough to acknowledge it. Ma'am, the gate agent said gently. Final call. Lena looked at the jetway, looked at her boarding pass, looked at Vincent. I don't know what to do, she whispered. Yes, you do. You've always known. You're just scared to trust it. What if you change your mind? What if you wake up tomorrow and realize this is crazy, that I'm just your housekeeper and you're Vincent Moretti and this whole thing is impossible? Then I'll wake up the day after that and realize I'm an idiot, and the day after that and the day after that, until I finally get it through my thick skull that the best thing that ever happened to me walked into my life with a vacuum cleaner and a quiet voice, and I almost let her disappear. That's not a plan. That's hope. Hope is all I've got right now. Hope and honesty. And the truth that I can't let you get on that plane without fighting for you. I'm closing the door, the agent announced. Ma'am, if you're getting on this flight, it needs to be now. Lena looked at Vincent, really looked at him, and he looked back, letting her see everything. The fear, the desperation, the truth he'd been hiding from himself for months. Tell me one more thing, she said. Tell me the real reason you followed me Friday night. Vincent took a breath. Because the thought of you smiling at someone else made me want to burn the world down. Because I've built an empire on control, and the idea of you being out there, beyond my reach, beyond my protection, made me feel like I was losing my mind. Because for 11 months, you've been the only honest thing in my life, and I didn't know it until I thought I might lose you. That's possessive. That's not healthy. I know. I'm working on it. That's not good enough. I know that too, but I'm asking you to let me try. Let me learn how to do this right. Let me prove that I can be the man who deserves you, instead of the man who was too blind to see you. Lena closed her eyes. Vincent watched her struggle, saw the war playing out across her face. She'd built walls, had every right to build walls. He was asking her to tear them down and trust the man who'd given her every reason not to. The jetway door started to close. Lena's eyes opened. She turned to the gate agent and handed back her boarding pass. I'm not getting on the plane. The agent blinked. You're sure? This is the last flight to Seattle tonight. I'm sure. Vincent's heart, which had been clenched in his chest for the past 20 minutes, suddenly expanded. Lena, don't. She held up a hand, stopping him. Don't say anything yet. I'm not doing this because you convinced me. I'm doing this because I'm choosing to believe that people can change, that you can change. But Vincent, if you hurt me, if you wake up tomorrow and decide this was a mistake, I won't recover from it. Do you understand? I've given you 11 months of invisible love. I can't give you any more. You won't have to. You don't know that. Yes, I do, because I've spent 3 days feeling what you felt for 11 months. And Lena, I can't do it anymore. I can't not see you. I can't pretend you don't matter. I can't go back to that penthouse and watch you move through my space like a ghost. He took her hand again. This time she let him. So yes, I know. I know that I'd rather burn my empire to the ground than lose you now. Lena squeezed his hand. That's dramatic. I'm a dramatic person. I've noticed. They stood there hand in hand while around them the airport moved through its rhythms, flights boarding, families reuniting, people saying goodbye. "So what happens now?" Lena asked. "Now I take you home. Not to your apartment, not to my penthouse. Somewhere neutral. We get coffee, we talk. You tell me everything I should have asked about months ago. Your favorite food, your dreams, why you became a housekeeper, what you're running from, what you're running toward. That's a lot of talking. We have a lot of catching up to do." Lena smiled, small, tentative, but real. "What if I say no? What if I want to go home and sleep and process all of this before I make any decisions? Then I'll take you home and leave you alone and show up tomorrow to ask again. And the day after that. And the day after that." Sounds exhausting. "I'm very motivated." She laughed, and the sound hit Vincent like a physical thing, warm and genuine and everything he hadn't known he needed. "Okay," she said. "Okay. Okay, coffee, talking, neutral ground." She picked up her suitcase. "But Vincent, I need you to understand something. Anything. I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break if you're honest with me. What I can't handle is being invisible again. So if we do this, if we try this, I need you to promise that you'll see me. Even on the days I'm not wearing red. Even on the days I'm exhausted and wearing blue. Even on the days I'm cleaning your kitchen and humming sad songs." Vincent lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I promise. No more invisibility, no more pretending, just us being honest, figuring this out together." "That's terrifying." "I know. I could still get hurt. I'll do everything in my power to make sure you don't." "That's not a guarantee." "No, but it's a promise, and I keep my promises." Lena studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, let's get coffee. Let's talk. Let's see if Vincent Moretti can actually handle dating his former housekeeper." "Former? Well, I quit, remember? You're going to need to hire someone new." Vincent started walking toward the exit, pulling her gently along. "Or I could just clean my own penthouse." "Have you ever cleaned anything in your life?" "There's a first time for everything." "This I have to see." They made it to the parking garage before Vincent's phone started buzzing. Tommy, probably, wondering what the hell had happened. Vincent ignored it, let it buzz. For once in his life, his empire could wait. Because walking beside him, hand in his, was something more important than territory or shipments or power. She was real. She was choosing him. And Vincent Moretti, who'd spent his life taking what he wanted, had finally learned that the most valuable things couldn't be taken. They had to be earned. And he intended to spend every day proving he was worth the chance she was giving him. The coffee shop Vincent chose was a 24-hour diner on the edge of downtown, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and possibility. Red vinyl booths lined the windows, and a tired waitress with kind eyes showed them to a corner table without comment, though her gaze lingered on Vincent with recognition that made Lena tense slightly. "She knows who you are," Lena said once they were seated. "Most people do." Vincent kept his eyes on her, not the waitress. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in an hour." The waitress returned with 2 mugs and a pot of coffee that had definitely been sitting on the burner too long. Vincent waited until she left before speaking. "So, favorite food?" Lena wrapped her hands around the warm mug, and Vincent noticed for the first time how delicate her fingers were, how elegant despite the lack of polish or jewelry. "You really want to start there?" "I want to start with you telling me something true, something I should have asked months ago. Favorite food seems as good a place as any." She considered this, lips curving into a small smile. "Soup dumplings. There's a place in Chinatown, tiny spot with maybe 6 tables. I go there once a month when I can afford it. The dumplings are perfect. Thin skin, rich broth, just enough pork. I eat them too fast and burn my mouth every single time." Vincent pulled out his phone, started typing. "What are you doing?" "Making a note. Soup dumplings, Chinatown, once a month." He looked up. "Next time you go, I'm taking you. And I'm going to watch you burn your mouth and not say I told you so." "That's presumptuous. Assuming there's a next time." "There will be." "What else?" For the next hour, Lena talked and Vincent listened. She told him about growing up in a small town in Iowa, the middle child of 5 kids who all looked so similar that teachers confused them for years. She told him about being invisible there too, not pretty enough to stand out, not troublesome enough to get attention, just quiet Lena who read too much and dreamed too big. I came to Chicago at 19, she said, staring into her coffee. Thought I'd go to art school, become a painter, make something beautiful that would make people see me. What happened? Reality. Art school is expensive. I worked 3 jobs trying to afford it, but my dad got sick. Cancer. I sent most of my money home for treatments. He died anyway, 2 years later. By then I'd dropped out, given up on painting, and started cleaning houses because it paid better than retail, and I could make my own schedule. Vincent felt something twist in his chest. I'm sorry about your father. Don't be. We weren't close. He never really saw me either, too busy with my older brothers, the ones who played football and made him proud. But he was still my dad, you know? And my mom needed help, so I helped. Do you still paint? The question seemed to surprise her. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep. Nothing serious, just sketches mostly. I want to see them. They're not good. I don't care if they're good. I want to see what you create when you think no one's watching. Lena's eyes met his, searching. You're different than I expected. When I first started working for you, I thought you'd be cruel, demanding. The way people talk about you, the stories I heard, I expected a monster. Maybe I am a monster, just not to you. That's not reassuring, Vincent. It's honest. She couldn't argue with that. The waitress refilled their coffee, left again. Outside the windows, Chicago's night crowd thinned as the hour crept toward 2 a.m. Your turn, Lena said. Tell me something true. Something you've never told anyone. Vincent traced the rim of his mug, considering. He'd built his life on secrets, on information control, on never revealing more than necessary. But Lena had handed him her vulnerabilities on a silver platter. The least he could do was reciprocate. I never wanted this life, he said finally. The empire, the violence, the constant weight of making decisions that determine whether people live or die. Then why do you do it? Because my father built it, and when he died, it fell to me. I was 23. Didn't know anything about running an organization, but I learned fast because the alternative was watching everything he'd built crumble, watching the people who depended on us get swallowed by worse men than me. You think you're protecting people? I know I'm protecting people. Do you know what happens to territories when there's no clear power, chaos, violence, innocents getting caught in crossfire? My father understood that. He was brutal when he needed to be, but he had rules, lines he wouldn't cross. I've tried to maintain that. Lena was quiet for a moment. Do you ever want out? Every day. And never. It's complicated. Most true things are. They talked until the coffee went cold, until the waitress started giving them pointed looks, until the sky outside began to lighten with the threat of dawn. Vincent learned that Lena's favorite color was actually green, not blue. She just wore blue when she was tired because it reminded her of her mother's kitchen in Iowa. He learned that she'd had a cat named Dickens who died last year, and she still sometimes forgot and bought cat food. He learned that she sang in the shower, that she was afraid of heights but loved the view from his penthouse anyway, that she'd never been in love before him and wasn't entirely sure she knew what she was doing. I don't know what I'm doing either, Vincent admitted. I've dated, had relationships, I suppose, but nothing that felt like this. Like what? Like if I mess this up, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Lena reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. Then don't mess it up. That's the plan. Plans don't always work out. Mine usually do. That's arrogance talking. Confidence. There's a difference. She laughed, and Vincent felt something settle in his chest, something that felt suspiciously like peace. His phone buzzed for the 10th time. He'd been ignoring it all night, but Lena glanced at it pointedly. You should probably answer that. Someone's persistent. Vincent checked the screen. 15 missed calls from Tommy, 6 from his second-in-command, Marco, 3 from numbers he didn't recognize. Something was wrong. He called Tommy back. His lieutenant answered on the first ring. Boss, where the hell have you been? I've been calling for hours. I've been busy. What's the problem? The South Side situation. It's blown up. Martinez's crew hit one of our warehouses. Place is on fire and there's bodies. We need you here now. Vincent's jaw tightened. The South Side problem was supposed to be handled quietly, diplomatically. Martinez was ambitious but not stupid. An outright attack meant something had changed and not in Vincent's favor. How many bodies? 3 of ours, 2 of theirs. It's a mess, boss. Police are on their way. We need to control this before it turns into a war. Vincent looked at Lena, who was watching him with understanding in her eyes. She'd heard enough of the conversation to know what was happening. I have to go, he said to her, not Tommy. I know. This is what my life looks like. Crisis at 4 a.m, violence, decisions that can't wait. I know that too, and you're still here, for now. But Vincent, if this is going to work, if we're going to work, I need you to be honest with me about what your world looks like. Not just the penthouse and the power. The ugly parts too. Vincent stood, threw cash on the table for a bill that couldn't have been more than $20. Come with me. Lena blinked. What? To the warehouse. I need to handle this, but I don't want to leave you. Come with me. See what my life really looks like. That's insane. You're taking me to a crime scene? I'm showing you the truth. You said you needed honesty. This is honest. This is my world when it's burning down. Vincent, I don't think... If you're going to be part of my life, you need to understand what that means. Not the sanitized version, the real version. He held out his hand. Trust me. Lena stared at his hand for a long moment. Then she grabbed her jacket and took it. The drive to the South Side took 20 minutes. Vincent made calls the entire way, getting updates, giving orders, his voice cold and commanding in a way Lena had never heard before. This was Vincent Moretti, the crime lord, not Vincent, the man who'd chased her through an airport with desperate confessions. Tommy, I want Martinez contained but not touched. No retaliation until I know what triggered this. Marco, get our lawyers on standby in case any of our people get picked up. And someone call the fire department off. Tell them we'll handle our own damages. Boss, the fire department's already there. Then make them leave. I don't want city officials crawling through my warehouse asking questions. He ended the call as they pulled up to a building engulfed in flames. Fire trucks lined the street despite Vincent's orders, along with police cars and an ambulance. Men in Vincent's employ stood in clusters, some injured, all angry. Tommy met them as Vincent got out of the car, his eyes widening when he saw Lena. Boss, what's she doing here? With me. Status report. Tommy tore his gaze from Lena, focused on Vincent. Martinez's crew hit us around midnight, took out the guards, planted accelerant, lit it up. Our guys inside barely got out. 3 didn't make it, Santos, Mikey, and Pete. We got 2 of Martinez's men before they could escape. They're in the back office, roughed up but alive. Have they talked? Not yet, waiting for you. Vincent nodded, started toward the building. Lena followed, Tommy trailing behind them with increasing concern. Boss, are you sure you want her to? I'm sure. The back office was a concrete room that had survived the fire, filled with smoke and tension. 2 men sat tied to chairs, faces bloody, eyes defiant. Vincent's men surrounded them, hands on weapons, waiting for orders. Vincent walked past them without acknowledgement, stopped in front of the prisoners. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. You have one chance to tell me why Martinez decided to start a war tonight. One chance to explain why 3 of my men are dead. One chance before I stop being reasonable. The men stayed silent, exchanging glances. Vincent waited 5 seconds. Then he turned to Marco. Take them to the river. Make it slow. Wait! One of the men broke. Wait, okay? We'll talk. Vincent turned back, expression unchanged. I'm listening. Martinez got word that you were distracted, that you were chasing some woman around the city instead of handling business. He figured if you were soft enough to lose your head over a girl, you were soft enough to lose territory. The words hung in the smoky air. Vincent's expression didn't change, but Lena felt the temperature in the room drop. What woman? Vincent asked, his voice dangerously soft. Your housekeeper. Martinez has guys watching your building. They saw her leave in a hurry, saw you chase after her. He said any man who abandons his empire for a woman deserves to lose it. Vincent was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. Marco, call Martinez. Tell him I want a meeting tomorrow, neutral ground. Boss, tell him he has 12 hours to decide if he wants to negotiate or if he wants to find out what happens when I stop being distracted and start being focused. Marco pulled out his phone. Vincent turned to Tommy. Get our dead to their families, full compensation plus extra. Make sure they know we take care of our own. And these two? Tommy gestured to the prisoners. Vincent looked at them with cold assessment. Let them go. They're messengers, not soldiers. Martinez sent them to die. I'm sending them back to tell him it didn't work. He walked out of the office, Lena following. Outside, the fire was under control. The building a smoking shell. Dawn had fully broken now, painting the destruction in harsh light. I'm sorry you had to see that, Vincent said. Lena was quiet, processing. Those men died because of me, because you came after me instead of handling business. Those men died because Martinez is ambitious and stupid. This would have happened eventually. You just gave him an excuse to move his timeline up. That's not comforting. It's true. Vincent turned to face her. This is my world, Lena. This is what happens when I'm not paying attention. People die. Buildings burn. Men make moves because they think I'm vulnerable. Are you? Vulnerable? Yes? The admission seemed to cost him something. For the first time in my life, I am. Because the thought of losing you makes me want to burn Martinez's entire operation to the ground. Because I drove away from a crisis to chase you through an airport. Because standing here right now, looking at you in the firelight, I'm more worried about whether you're going to walk away than I am about the war that might be starting. Lena stepped closer, close enough to smell smoke on his clothes, to see the exhaustion in his eyes. I'm not walking away. You should. This is insane. I'm dragging you into a world where people die over territory disputes, where my enemies will see you as a weakness to exploit, where loving me could get you killed. Let me decide what risks I'm willing to take. Lena, no, listen to me, Vincent. I've spent my whole life being invisible, being safe, staying in the background where nothing could touch me. And you know what? I was miserable. So yes, this is scary. Yes, it's dangerous, but it's also real. You're real. And I'd rather have something real and dangerous than something safe and hollow. Vincent pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. Around them, his men pretended not to watch, but Lena could feel their eyes, their assessment, their judgment. I can't promise to keep you safe, Vincent said. Not completely. My world doesn't allow for that. I'm not asking you to keep me safe. I'm asking you to keep being honest, to keep seeing me, to let me decide if this is worth it. Is it? Worth it? Lena pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Ask me again when I haven't been up for 24 hours witnessing arson and hostage interrogation. Despite everything, Vincent smiled. Fair enough. Tommy approached cautiously. Boss, we should get you both out of here. Police are asking questions, and I don't think it's good for her to be connected to this scene. He was right. Lena being seen here, being connected to Vincent in this context, would put a target on her back that no amount of protection could fully eliminate. Take her home, Vincent said. Her apartment. Make sure she gets inside safe. I can take myself home, Lena protested. Humor me. Please. There was that word again. Please. Coming from a man who usually commanded, it carried extra weight. Okay. But Vincent, what about the meeting with Martinez? I'll handle it. This is business. You don't need to be involved. I'm already involved. They know about me. They're using me as evidence that you're weak. Which is exactly why you need to stay out of sight until I handle this. Lena wanted to argue, but the exhaustion was catching up with her. Her feet hurt, her eyes burned, and the reality of what she'd just witnessed was starting to sink in with uncomfortable clarity. Promise me you'll be careful, she said. I'm always careful. That's not a promise. Vincent kissed her forehead, gentle despite the violence still hanging in the air around them. I promise. Now go home. Get some sleep. I'll call you when the meeting's done. Tommy led her to a different car, a nondescript sedan that wouldn't draw attention. As they pulled away, Lena looked back to see Vincent standing in front of the smoking warehouse, phone already to his ear, back in command mode. This was the man she'd chosen, the man who ran an empire built on violence and control, the man who'd chased her through an airport and then brought her to a crime scene because she'd asked for honesty, the man who made her feel visible for the first time in her life, even if that visibility came with danger. Tommy drove in silence until they were halfway to her apartment. Then he spoke, his voice careful. You know what you're getting into with him? I'm starting to understand. Most women, they see the penthouse and the money and think it's glamorous. They don't see nights like tonight. They don't see the cost. I'm not most women. No, you're not. That's why he's losing his mind over you. Tommy glanced at her in the rearview mirror. I've known Vincent for 8 years. Never seen him like this. Never seen him bring a woman into the business side of things. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you back there. Is that a warning? It's an observation, and maybe a request. What request? Don't break his heart. He acts tough. Acts like nothing touches him. But if you walk away now after he's let himself be vulnerable, it'll destroy something in him that the rest of us need intact. Lena absorbed this. You're worried about him. I'm worried about all of us. A distracted Vincent is a dangerous Vincent. A heartbroken Vincent would be catastrophic. So you want me to stay with him out of obligation? To keep your boss functional? I want you to stay with him because you love him. And I want you to be sure before you make that commitment, because there's no casual with Vincent Moretti. It's all or nothing, and nothing will break him. They pulled up outside her building. Tommy got out, opened her door, scanned the street with professional paranoia. I'll have someone watching your building until this Martinez situation is resolved, he said. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Is that necessary? Vincent would have my head if anything happened to you. So yes. Lena started toward her building, then turned back. Tommy, take care of him at this meeting. Make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Tommy's expression softened slightly. That's my job. Has been for years. But it helps that he finally has someone else who cares whether he comes home. Lena made it to her third-floor apartment, locked the door behind her, and finally let herself process everything that had happened in the past 6 hours. The airport, the confessions, the coffee shop conversation, the warehouse, the violence, the casual way Vincent had ordered men to the river, then rescinded it just as casually. This was the man she was falling for. This was the world she was choosing. Her phone buzzed, a text from Vincent. Are you home safe? She smiled despite her exhaustion. Yes, Tommy was very professional. You have good people. I do. Get some sleep. I'll call you after the meeting. Be careful. Always am. Lena? Yes? Thank you for not getting on that plane. She stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Thank you for giving me a reason to stay. Lena fell asleep on her couch, still wearing her jacket, her phone clutched in her hand, waiting for the call that would tell her Vincent had survived his meeting with the man who wanted to use her as proof of weakness. And somewhere across the city, Vincent Moretti prepared for a confrontation that would determine whether his empire could survive him being human, whether he could be both the ruthless leader his world required and the vulnerable man Lena deserved, whether love and violence could coexist in the same heart. The answer would come at noon, in a neutral warehouse, with armed men on both sides and everything Vincent had built hanging in the balance. Vincent stood in the abandoned factory on the city's edge, watching his men position themselves along the perimeter. The building had been neutral ground for territory negotiations for 20 years, cold concrete and broken windows, far enough from civilian areas that gunfire wouldn't draw immediate police attention, close enough to both territories that neither side could claim geographical advantage. Marco checked his watch. 11:55. Martinez should be here any minute. He'll be late, Vincent said. He's trying to make a point, showing that he's not intimidated. Are you? Vincent looked at his second-in-command. Marco had been with him for 6 years, loyal and smart, the kind of man who asked the questions no one else dared to voice. Intimidated? No. Concerned? Yes. Martinez isn't acting like himself. The warehouse hit was sloppy, emotional. He's either desperate or being pushed by someone else. Oh, you think there's someone behind him? I think Martinez has ambition, but not enough resources to start a war alone. Someone's backing him. We need to find out who. A black SUV pulled into the lot, followed by two more. Martinez's crew. Vincent counted 8 men, all armed, all watching Vincent's people with the kind of tension that could explode into violence with one wrong word. Martinez himself emerged from the middle vehicle, a stocky man in his 40s with slicked back hair and a suit that cost more than it should. He'd been running the South Side for 3 years, taking it over when the previous boss died of a convenient heart attack that everyone knew wasn't natural. "Moretti," Martinez called out, his voice carrying across the empty space. "Appreciate you making time in your busy schedule. I know you've been preoccupied." The jab was obvious. Vincent ignored it, walking forward until he and Martinez stood 10 feet apart, their respective crews behind them like chess pieces waiting for a move. "You wanted this meeting," Vincent said. "So talk. Explain why you burned my warehouse and killed my men. Your warehouse was sitting on territory that should be mine. Has been yours long enough. Time for redistribution." Redistribution? Vincent's tone was flat. "That's an interesting word for theft. Call it what you want. The fact is, you've been distracted, chasing women, letting your empire crack while you play house with your cleaning lady." Martinez smiled, showing too many teeth. "A man who can't keep his priorities straight doesn't deserve to hold territory." Vincent felt the familiar darkness uncurl in his chest, the part of him that had built this empire on fear and force. But he kept his voice level, controlled. "My personal life is none of your concern. My territory is. And you've made a mistake, Martinez. A big one." "Have I?" "Because from where I'm standing, you look weak. You abandoned your operation last night to chase after some woman who means nothing to your business. You brought her to a crime scene like she's part of your crew. You're losing focus, Moretti. And when a man loses focus, he loses power." "Is that what you think happened? That I lost focus?" "I think you got soft. I think you let a pretty face distract you from what matters. And I think it's time for someone with clear priorities to take over." Vincent was quiet for a moment, studying Martinez, looking for the tell, the sign that would reveal who was really behind this play. Martinez was ambitious, yes, but he wasn't stupid enough to make a move like this alone. "Who's backing you?" Vincent asked. "Because we both know you don't have the resources to sustain a war with me. So who promised you support? Who convinced you this was a good idea?" Martinez's smile faltered slightly. "I don't need backing. I have enough. You have 8 men here and maybe 30 more in your crew. I have 200. You control 3 blocks in the South Side. I control half the city. You burned 1 warehouse. I could burn your entire operation to the ground before sunset." Vincent took a step closer. "So I'll ask again. Who's backing you?" "That's none of your business. It became my business when they used you to test me, when they convinced you to attack my warehouse to see how I'd respond, when they decided to use my personal life as evidence of weakness." Vincent's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. "Tell me who they are, Martinez. Last chance." Martinez glanced at his men, weighing his options. Vincent could see the calculation happening, the realization that this meeting might not end the way Martinez had planned. "The Italians," Martinez said finally. "They approached me 2 months ago, said they were tired of your control over the North Side, said if I helped destabilize your operations, they'd back my expansion, give me resources, protection, territory." Vincent felt the pieces click into place. The Italians had been quiet lately, too quiet. He'd thought they were focused on their own internal politics, but apparently they'd been planning a power play, using Martinez as a pawn to test Vincent's resolve. "And you believed them?" Vincent asked. "You believed the Italians would actually honor that deal after you'd outlived your usefulness?" "They have more reason to trust me than to trust you. You're distracted, Moretti. Everyone can see it." "What everyone sees," Vincent said quietly, "is a man secure enough in his power that he doesn't have to prove himself every second of every day. What they see is a man who's built something strong enough that it doesn't crumble the moment he has a personal life. But apparently you and the Italians see weakness. So let me clarify something for you." He took another step forward. Martinez's hand moved toward his weapon, but Vincent's men were faster, guns suddenly visible and aimed. "I brought Lena to that crime scene because I wanted her to understand what my world looks like," Vincent continued. I wanted her to see the violence, the decisions, the cost of being with me. And you know what she did? She stayed. She looked at the burning building and the bodies and the blood, and she chose to stay. That's not weakness, Martinez. That's strength. The kind of strength you'll never understand because you think power comes from violence alone. Touching speech, Martinez said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Doesn't change the fact that the Italians are making their move. With or without me, they're coming for your territory. Let them come. But you made your choice when you burned my warehouse. You killed my men. You declared war. Now you get to live with the consequences. Martinez's hand fully went to his gun. You going to kill me here? In a neutral meeting? That's against the rules, Moretti. I'm not going to kill you. I'm going to give you exactly 12 hours to shut down your operation and leave Chicago. Take your money, take your crew, and disappear. Because if you're still in this city tomorrow at noon, I will personally hunt down every single person who works for you, every business that pays you protection, every safe house where you hide your money. And when I'm done with them, I'll come for you. You can't do that. The other bosses won't allow it. There are rules. The rules went out the window when you attacked me, when you killed my men, when you decided to use my personal life as justification for war. Vincent's voice was ice now, absolute and final. 12 hours, Martinez, starting now. And if I don't leave? Then you'll discover that the man you thought was weak because he loves someone is actually much more dangerous than the man who loved nothing at all. Because now I have something to protect, something worth fighting for, and I will burn this entire city down before I let anyone use her to hurt me. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Martinez looked at his men, at Vincent's men, at the gun still pointed in his direction. He was outmatched, and he knew it. The Italians had promised him support, but they weren't here. They'd sent him alone to test Vincent's response, and now he was discovering that the test had failed. 12 hours, Vincent repeated. And Martinez? Tell the Italians that if they want my territory, they can come take it themselves. Stop hiding behind pawns. Martinez backed toward his SUV, his men covering him. This isn't over, Moretti. Yes, it is. You just haven't accepted it yet. They drove away in a spray of gravel and exhaust. Vincent stood watching until the vehicles disappeared, then turned to Marco. Get me everything we have on the Italians' recent movements, bank accounts, shipments, meetings. I want to know what they're planning before they make their next move. You really think they'll come directly? I think they were hoping Martinez would do enough damage that I'd be vulnerable when they made their play. Now that he's failed, they'll either back off or escalate. We need to be ready for either scenario. And Martinez? You really giving him 12 hours? Vincent's jaw tightened. He killed 3 of our men, burned our property, used Lena as evidence that I'm weak. What do you think? I think he's got about 6 hours before Tommy's crew finds him. Then Tommy better work fast. I want this done quietly. No mess, no witnesses. Just Martinez and his lieutenants disappearing like they never existed. Marco nodded, pulled out his phone to make the necessary calls. Vincent walked to the edge of the factory, looking out over the city. The sun was high now, burning off the morning fog. Somewhere across town, Lena was sleeping, trusting him to handle this. Trusting him to be both the man who'd confessed his feelings in an airport and the man who could order executions without flinching. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. Are you okay? Is it over? He smiled despite the darkness of what he'd just set in motion. Meeting's done. Situation handled. How did you sleep? Terrible. Kept waking up worried about you. Don't worry. I'm fine. I'll come by later? I'd like that. Vincent? Yes? Whatever happened in that meeting, whatever you had to do, I trust you. Just come back safe. Vincent stared at the message. She trusted him. Even knowing what he was, what he did, the violence he was capable of, she trusted him. I will. Promise. He pocketed his phone as Tommy approached, expression grim. Got a location on Martinez. He's holed up in a safe house on the south side. Looks like he's packing to run. How many men with him? 4. The rest scattered after the meeting. Word's getting out that you're hunting him. Good. Let them scatter. I want them to know what happens when you come after me. Vincent looked at Tommy. Make it clean. No collateral damage. Just Martinez and anyone stupid enough to stay with him. You got it, boss. Tommy hesitated. For what it's worth, I think you handled the meeting right, showing strength without unnecessary violence. Your girl would be proud. Vincent raised an eyebrow. My girl? That's what we're calling her, isn't it? Lena, your girl. The woman who's got Vincent Moretti acting human for the first time in his life. I've always been human, Tommy. Have you, though? Tommy's expression was serious. Because from where I've been standing for 8 years, you've been more machine than man. Efficient, cold, necessary for running this operation, but not exactly human. Then she shows up in a red dress, and suddenly you're chasing through airports and bringing her to crime scenes and texting during business hours. That's human, boss. That's messy and complicated and real. Your point? My point is don't lose that. Don't let the business turn you back into the machine. She makes you better. We all see it. Vincent absorbed this, unsure how to respond. He'd spent his entire adult life building walls between his personal feelings and his professional decisions. Now those walls were crumbling, and everyone could see it. Handle Martinez, Vincent said instead of addressing Tommy's observation. I'll deal with the Italians. You gonna tell Lena what happened, what you ordered? I'm gonna tell her the truth. That's what she asked for. Tommy nodded, started to leave, then turned back. Boss, one more thing. When this is over, when Martinez is gone and the Italians are dealt with, you should take a vacation. Take her somewhere nice, that's somewhere that isn't Chicago and isn't covered in blood. I don't take vacations. Maybe it's time you started. Vincent watched Tommy walk away, then pulled out his phone and called the one person who might actually understand the impossible balance he was trying to maintain. His lawyer, Patricia, answered on the second ring. Vincent, I heard about the warehouse. Are we expecting legal complications? Handled. I need something else. I need you to set up a trust, anonymous, for the families of the 3 men who died last night. How much? Enough that they never have to worry about money again. College funds for kids, mortgage payments, everything. And Patricia? I don't want them to know it came from me. Make it look like insurance or something. There was a pause. That's surprisingly thoughtful of you. They died because Martinez thought I was distracted. The least I can do is make sure their families are taken care of. Consider it done. Vincent, everything okay? You sound different. I'm fine, just reevaluating priorities. He ended the call and headed to his car. The drive to Lena's apartment took 20 minutes, enough time for Vincent to receive confirmation from Tommy that Martinez had been located and isolated. Enough time for the reality of what he'd ordered to settle in his chest like a stone. He was about to go see the woman he loved with the blood of his enemies still wet on his hands. Not literally. He never did his own wet work anymore, but metaphorically. He'd ordered executions, set machinery in motion that would result in deaths before sunset, and he was going to walk into Lena's apartment and pretend to be a normal man capable of normal love, except she'd told him she wanted honesty. Had stood in a burning warehouse and chosen to stay despite seeing the ugliest parts of his world. So when he knocked on her door 20 minutes later, he was still wearing the same clothes from the meeting, still carrying the weight of the decisions he'd made, still trying to figure out how to be both the ruthless crime lord his empire needed and the vulnerable man Lena deserved. She opened the door in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, her hair still messy from sleep, no makeup, completely beautiful. Hi, she said. Hi. You look exhausted. It's been a long morning. She stepped aside, let him in. Her apartment was small but warm. Books everywhere, plants on every surface, paintings propped against walls waiting to be hung. This was Lena's world, the one she'd built separate from his penthouse and his empire. Tell me what happened, she said, guiding him to her couch. Vincent sat, suddenly feeling the exhaustion Tommy had mentioned. The meeting was exactly what I expected. Martinez admitted the Italians are backing him, admitted they convinced him to attack me as a test. I gave him 12 hours to leave Chicago. And if he doesn't? He won't get the chance. I've already sent people to handle it. Lena was quiet, processing. Handle it? You mean kill him? Yes. Because he attacked you. Because he killed my men, burned my property, started a war, There are consequences for those actions in my world. I know. She sat beside him, took his hand. I'm not judging you. I'm trying to understand. I don't expect you to understand. I'm not sure I understand it myself anymore. For years, decisions like this were easy. Someone crosses a line, you eliminate them. It's simple, clean, necessary. But now it's not? Now I'm sitting in your apartment, holding your hand, and wondering what it says about me that I can order someone's death and then come here and kiss you like I'm not a monster. Lena shifted, moved to straddle his lap so she could look directly into his eyes. The position was intimate, grounding, forcing him to meet her gaze. You're not a monster, she said firmly. Lena, let me finish. You're not a monster. You're a man who runs an empire built on violence. A man who makes impossible decisions so other people don't have to. A man who just set up trust funds for the families of men who died working for you, because Tommy called me and told me while you were driving over. Vincent blinked. He did? He did. Said you wanted it anonymous, but he thought I should know. Thought I should see that side of you too. She cupped his face in her hands. You're not a monster, Vincent. You're just a man trying to survive in a world that doesn't forgive weakness. And now you're trying to figure out how to survive while also being vulnerable with me. I don't expect you to have all the answers. I don't have any answers. I'm making this up as I go. Then we'll make it up together. Vincent pulled her closer, buried his face in her neck, breathed in her scent, something floral and clean, completely separate from the smoke and violence of his morning. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you've got me anyway. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, letting the morning's violence fade into background noise. Eventually, Lena pulled back. Are you hungry? I was about to make lunch. You don't have to. I want to. Besides, I'm starving, and cooking relaxes me. Come keep me company. He followed her to the tiny kitchen, watched her pull ingredients from the refrigerator with practiced efficiency. Eggs, vegetables, cheese, bread. Simple things that she transformed into something that smelled incredible. My mom taught me to cook, she said, chopping peppers. Said a woman should know how to make a meal out of nothing. I used to hate it, thought it was old-fashioned. But after she died, cooking made me feel close to her. When did she pass? 3 years ago. Heart attack. Quick. She didn't suffer. Lena's hands paused, then resumed their rhythm. She would have liked you, I think. A crime lord? Your mother would have liked me? She would have liked that you noticed details, that you remembered my father's death even though I only mentioned it once, that you're sitting in my kitchen right now instead of running your empire. She glanced at him, though she also would have lectured you about getting enough sleep and eating regular meals. I eat regular meals. Cold pizza at 3 a.m. doesn't count. How do you know about that? Because I've cleaned your kitchen, Vincent. I've seen the evidence. You're terrible at taking care of yourself. I function fine. Functioning isn't the same as thriving. She slid an omelet onto a plate, handed it to him. Eat. He ate. It was delicious, better than anything his private chef made, better than the expensive restaurants he frequented, because Lena had made it, and somehow that transformed simple eggs into something meaningful. His phone buzzed. Tommy. Package delivered, clean, no complications. Martinez was dead. The Southside situation was handled. Vincent should have felt relief or satisfaction, or at least the grim sense of completion that usually came with eliminating threats. Instead, he felt tired. Lena was watching him. Bad news? Resolution. The Martinez situation is handled. She nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying. And the Italians? That's next. But not today. Today I'm going to sit in your kitchen and eat your cooking and pretend I'm a normal man for a few hours. You're not normal, Vincent. You'll never be normal. But you can be here. You can be present. You can be mine. She sat across from him with her own plate. That's enough. They ate in comfortable silence, and Vincent realized that this simple moment of shared food and quiet companionship was what he'd been missing his entire life. Not the power or the money or the control, just someone to eat lunch with. Someone who saw all of him and chose to stay anyway. I need to tell you something, he said. Okay. The Italians won't stop. Taking out Martinez was necessary, but it's only going to make them more aggressive. They're going to push harder, try different tactics, and eventually they're going to figure out that the fastest way to hurt me is through you. Lena set down her fork. I know. You know? I'm not stupid, Vincent. I understood the risk the moment I chose to stay. The moment those men at the warehouse said Martinez was using me as evidence of your weakness. People in your world will see me as a vulnerability. Which is why I need you to accept protection. Full time. Bodyguards, security detail, the works. I know it's invasive and uncomfortable, but okay? Vincent blinked. Okay? Just like that? Just like that. I meant what I said last night. I'm choosing this. All of it. The good parts and the scary parts. If protection keeps me safe and keeps you from worrying, then okay. It means giving up privacy. It means always having someone watching, following, reporting on your movements. I've been invisible my whole life, Vincent. Being watched is a small price to pay for being visible to you. He stood, moved around the table, pulled her into his arms. I love you. The words escaped before he could stop them, raw and honest and terrifying. Lena went still in his arms. What? I love you, he repeated, because there was no taking it back now. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out, but I need you to know. After everything that's happened, after the warehouse and the meeting and Martinez, I need you to know that this isn't about control or possession or keeping what's mine. This is love. Messy and complicated and probably unhealthy in a dozen different ways, but it's real. Lena pulled back enough to look at him, and Vincent saw tears gathering in her eyes. Say it again, she whispered. I love you, Lena Walsh. I love your quiet strength and your terrible taste in books and the way you cry at endings. I love that you're brave enough to stay even when you're scared. I love that you make me want to be better than I am. My taste in books isn't terrible. You read romance novels with half-naked men on the covers. So, they have good plot structure. They have heaving bosoms and dukes. Your point? Vincent laughed, pulled her closer. My point is I love you. Every part of you. Even the parts that have questionable literary preferences. I love you too, Lena said. Even the parts that order executions before lunch. And there it was. The truth laid bare between them. Love and violence, tenderness and brutality, all existing in the same space because that was what Vincent's world demanded. What happens now? Lena asked. Now I deal with the Italians. Make it clear that coming after me through you won't work, that attacking my people has consequences, that I'm not the weak, distracted man they think I am. And after that? After that, we figure out what a relationship looks like when one person runs a criminal empire and the other person is an artist who cleans houses and reads romance novels. Sounds complicated. Everything worth having is complicated. Is that from one of my romance novels? It's from experience. Vincent kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her mouth. But yes, probably also from one of your romance novels. They spent the rest of the afternoon in her small apartment, the outside world temporarily forgotten. Vincent told her about his plans for the Italians, not the violent details, but the strategy, the diplomacy, the careful maneuvering required to end a conflict without starting a war. Lena told him about the paintings she'd been working on, the dreams she'd abandoned, the life she wanted to build now that she wasn't invisible anymore. As the sun set over Chicago, painting her apartment in gold and amber, Vincent realized that he'd found something more valuable than territory or power or control. He'd found home. Not in his penthouse with its marble floors and bulletproof windows, but here, in a small apartment filled with books and plants, and a woman who loved him despite knowing exactly who he was. And for the first time in his life, Vincent Moretti understood that real strength wasn't about never showing weakness. It was about being vulnerable enough to let someone see your whole truth and trusting them not to destroy you with it. The war with the Italians came faster than Vincent anticipated. 3 days after Martinez's body was found in the river, they made their move. Not with violence, but with something more insidious. They went after Vincent's legitimate businesses, the ones that laundered money and provided cover for his operations. Health inspections suddenly found violations. Building permits were mysteriously revoked. Bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Vincent sat in his penthouse office, reviewing the damage reports with Marco and Tommy when Lena emerged from the bedroom wearing one of his shirts and carrying 2 cups of coffee. She'd been staying with him since accepting the protection detail, and her presence had transformed his sterile penthouse into something that felt lived in, warm. "You've been in here for 6 hours," she said, handing him coffee. "Take a break." "Can't. The Italians are hitting us on every front. You need to breathe. Eat something. Remember you're human." She looked at Marco and Tommy. "When's the last time any of you slept?" Tommy rubbed his eyes. "What day is it?" "That's what I thought." Lena moved to the kitchen, started pulling out ingredients. "I'm making food. You're all going to eat it. Then you're going to take a 20-minute break before diving back into whatever crisis management you're doing." Marco looked at Vincent, clearly unsure whether to follow her orders. Vincent just shrugged. "She's right. We're no good if we're running on fumes. 20 minutes. While Lena cooked, Vincent pulled her aside. "You don't have to take care of us." "I know, I want to. Besides, watching you 3 try to function on coffee and stress is painful." She cracked eggs into a pan. "How bad is it? Really?" "Bad. They're not coming at us with guns. They're using the system. Cops they own, judges they've paid off, bureaucrats who owe them favors. It's smart. Harder to fight than open warfare." "So fight smart back." "I'm trying, but every move I make, they counter. It's like they know my strategy before I implement it." Lena was quiet for a moment, focused on the eggs. Then she said, "What if you're thinking about this wrong?" "What do you mean?" "You're trying to match them move for move, trying to be defensive, but you're Vincent Moretti. When has defense ever been your strength?" Vincent stared at her. "You're saying I should go on offense. I'm saying you should do what you do best. Stop reacting to their moves and make them react to yours." She plated the eggs, added toast. "What do the Italians care about most? Power, control, reputation. Then hit them where it hurts, not their businesses, their pride." Marco had been listening, and now he spoke up. "She's got a point, boss. We've been playing their game. Maybe it's time to change the rules." Vincent's mind was already racing, pieces clicking into place. The Italians valued appearance above all else. They'd built their empire on old-world respect, on the illusion of untouchability. If Vincent could crack that illusion, expose them as vulnerable, it would do more damage than any amount of violence. "Tommy, get me files on every Italian operation in the city. Everything, legitimate and otherwise. I want to know where they're vulnerable." "On it." "Marco, reach out to the other families, quietly. See who's unhappy with Italian expansion. See who might be willing to reconsider alliances if the Italians showed weakness. You're building a coalition. I'm reminding everyone that the Italians aren't as strong as they pretend to be, and that backing them might not be the safe play they think it is." Lena set plates in front of them. "Eat first, then plot. Your brain works better with fuel." They ate, and Vincent found himself watching Lena move through his space with easy confidence. This was what the Italians had tried to use against him: his love for her, his distraction, his supposed weakness. But they'd miscalculated. Loving Lena didn't make him weaker. It gave him clarity, focus, something worth protecting beyond just power and territory. Over the next week, Vincent orchestrated a campaign that would have made Machiavelli proud. He leaked information about Italian money laundering to federal investigators, ensuring it couldn't be traced back to him. He had Marco spread rumors about Italian leadership being compromised, about internal conflicts and succession disputes. He arranged for key Italian businesses to face sudden labor strikes, equipment failures, supply chain disruptions. Nothing overtly criminal, just enough friction to make them look incompetent. And then, when the Italians were scrambling to contain the damage, Vincent made his real move. He called a meeting of all the major players in Chicago's underworld, a summit that hadn't been convened in a decade. Neutral ground, no weapons, just the heads of every significant operation in the city sitting around a table discussing the future. The Italians came because not showing up would be an admission of weakness. Vincent came because he'd carefully orchestrated the entire event to his advantage. Don Castellano, the aging head of the Italian operation, sat across from Vincent looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past week. His lieutenants flanked him, but Vincent could see the cracks in their unity, the the way they avoided eye contact with each other. "This summit is unprecedented," Castellano said, his voice still strong despite his appearance. "Why have you called us here, Moretti?" "To discuss the future of Chicago," Vincent replied. "Specifically, to discuss whether we continue down a path of destructive conflict or whether we remember why the old accords exist." "The accords that you've been violating," one of Castellano's men interjected. "The accords that say personal relationships shouldn't interfere with business?" "I haven't violated anything. I fell in love. That's not a business decision. That's a human one. But you decided to use it as an excuse to expand your territory, to test my resolve, to see if you could take what's mine. You showed weakness. I showed humanity. There's a difference." Vincent leaned forward. "But since we're discussing violations, let's talk about yours. Let's talk about backing Martinez's attack on my warehouse, about coordinating with federal agencies to harass my legitimate businesses, about trying to turn my allies against me through misinformation and intimidation." "We don't know what you're talking about," Castellano said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Don't insult my intelligence. We both know exactly what you've been doing. The question is what happens next." Vincent looked around the table at the other bosses. The Irish, the Russians, the independents. "I could escalate. Could turn this into a war that would tear the city apart and cost all of us money, blood, and territory. Or we could acknowledge that this gambit failed and return to the status quo." "You're asking us to back down?" Castellano's lieutenant was red-faced with anger. "To accept humiliation?" "I'm offering you a way out that doesn't end with your operation in ruins. Because make no mistake, if we go to war, I will win. Not quickly, not cleanly, but I will win. And everyone at this table will suffer in the process." "Arrogant, realistic." Vincent's voice was steel. "I've spent the last week showing you how vulnerable you really are. The federal investigations, the labor strikes, the supply chain issues, that was me being gentle. That was me giving you a taste of what I can do when I'm motivated. If I stop being gentle, if I dedicate my full resources to destroying you, how long do you think you'll last?" Castellano held up a hand, silencing his lieutenant. "What are you proposing?" "A return to the original territory agreements. You keep what you had before Martinez. I keep what I had. We both agree that personal relationships are off limits as leverage or targets. Anyone who violates that rule answers to everyone at this table." "And Martinez's territory?" "Distributed among the smaller operations. No single player gets it all. It becomes a buffer zone that benefits everyone and tempts no one." One of the Russian bosses spoke up, his accent thick. "And if Italians refuse?" "Then I'll be forced to demonstrate exactly how much damage I can do. And I'll do it with the backing of everyone at this table who's smart enough to recognize that stability benefits us all more than chaos." Vincent had spent the week not just undermining the Italians, but building quiet alliances. Promises of favorable terms, assistance with ongoing problems, the kind of diplomacy that turned potential enemies into temporary allies. The Russians wanted Italian territory in the north side. The Irish wanted protection from Italian expansion. The independents just wanted to survive without being swallowed by larger organizations. Vincent had given them all reasons to side with him instead of the Italians. Castellano looked around the table, saw the writing on the wall. He was outmaneuvered, outvoted, and out of options. "We accept your terms," he said finally. "The territories return to status quo. Personal relationships are off limits. Martinez's territory becomes neutral ground. And the attacks stop. All of them. Federal investigations, business harassment, everything." "Agreed." Vincent stood, extended his hand. Castellano took it, the handshake sealing the agreement in front of witnesses who would enforce it if either side violated the terms. As the meeting broke up, Tommy appeared at Vincent's elbow. "Nicely played, boss. You got everything you wanted without firing a shot." "Lena's idea, actually. She told me to stop playing defense." "Smart woman." "The smartest." "Where is she?" "Safe house on the north side, full security detail. She's been painting, apparently. Said something about finally having time to work without distractions." Vincent smiled. While he'd been orchestrating the end of a war, Lena had been creating art. The balance felt right somehow. Destruction and creation, violence and beauty, all existing in the same world. He went to her immediately after the summit, found her in the safe house surrounded by canvases. She'd been busy, a dozen paintings in various stages of completion, all of them vibrant and emotional and completely unlike anything Vincent had expected. "It's over," he said from the doorway. Lena looked up from her work, paint smeared on her cheek. "Over?" The Italians backed down, agreed to peace, agreed that personal relationships are off limits. "It's done." She set down her brush, crossed to him, and Vincent wrapped her in his arms, not caring that she was getting paint on his expensive suit. "You did it without bloodshed," she said. "Mostly your idea. You told me to play offense." "I told you to be yourself. You did the rest." She pulled back to look at him. "What happens now?" "Now we figure out what our life looks like when we're not in crisis mode." That sounds terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. They stood there in the paint-splattered safe house, and Vincent realized that this was the moment everything had been building toward. Not the summit, or the peace agreement, or the victory over the Italians. This quiet moment with Lena, both of them standing in the aftermath of chaos, choosing each other again. "I have something to tell you," Lena said. "Okay." "I've been offered a gallery showing, small place in Wicker Park. The owner saw some photos of my work and wants to feature me next month." Vincent felt pride surge through his chest. "Lena, that's incredible." "It's terrifying. I haven't shown my work publicly in years. What if people hate it? What if they won't? Your work is beautiful, honest, real. You're biased." "I'm right." "Are you going to do it?" She nodded slowly. "I think so. I've been invisible for so long. Maybe it's time to let people see what I create, not just who I am. I'll be at the opening, front row, telling everyone who'll listen that I'm with the artist." "That might hurt your reputation. Ruthless crime lord gushing about his girlfriend's paintings." "Let it. I've spent my whole life building a reputation on fear. Maybe it's time people saw something else." Over the next month, life settled into a new rhythm. Vincent returned to running his empire, but with boundaries now, actual working hours, weekends off, time carved out for Lena and for himself. His lieutenants adjusted to the new normal, some easier than others, but all of them recognizing that Vincent was more effective when he wasn't burning out. Lena moved into the penthouse, officially, her paintings and books and plants transforming Vincent's sterile space into a home. She kept taking cleaning jobs, not because she needed the money anymore, but because she liked the work, liked the quiet time to think while her hands were busy. Vincent didn't understand it, but he supported it anyway. The night of her gallery opening, Vincent wore a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent and stood in a crowded Wicker Park gallery watching strangers examine Lena's paintings. The work was stunning, abstract pieces that somehow captured emotion in color and texture, portraits that revealed hidden depths in ordinary faces, landscapes that made Chicago look both brutal and beautiful. "She's talented," Marco said, appearing beside Vincent with a glass of wine. "Didn't know what to expect, but this is good, really good." "She is." "You happy, boss?" Vincent looked across the room to where Lena stood talking to the gallery owner, animated and alive in a way he'd never seen during those 11 months when she'd been invisible. She was wearing the red dress, the one that had started everything, and she was radiant. "Yeah," Vincent said. "I am." "Good. You deserve it, both of you." The evening was a success. Lena sold 3 paintings, got commissions for 4 more, and collected business cards from people who wanted to follow her work. Vincent stood back and watched, proud and protective, his security team discreet but present. Afterwards, they returned to the penthouse, and Lena kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. "That was overwhelming," she said. "You were amazing. People actually liked my work. They paid money for it." "Money, Vincent." "Because it's worth it. You're worth it." She moved to the window, looked out over the city that had been her home for years but had never really seen her. "A year ago, I was invisible. Nobody knew my name. Nobody cared about my art. I cleaned houses and went home alone and convinced myself I was fine. And now? Now I have a gallery showing. Now I live with a man who runs half the city. Now I'm visible in ways that are both wonderful and terrifying." She turned to face him. "Now I'm happy. Actually genuinely happy, and it scares me how much I have to lose." Vincent crossed to her, pulled her close. You're not going to lose it. Lose me. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Your world is dangerous. Things happen. Then we'll face them together, like we faced the Italians, like we faced Martinez, like we'll face whatever comes next. What if I'm not strong enough? Lena, you were strong enough to love me when I was blind to you. Strong enough to call me out when I was being an idiot. Strong enough to stand in a burning warehouse and choose to stay. You're the strongest person I know. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, there were tears in her eyes. I love you, she said, even though you're impossible and dramatic and you run a criminal empire. I love you. I love you too. Even though you read terrible romance novels and cry at paintings and insist on cleaning houses, you don't need to clean. My romance novels aren't terrible. They have pirates. Historically accurate pirates. That's not a thing. You don't know that. They stood at the window, wrapped around each other, watching the city lights blur and streak in the glass. Below them, Chicago moved through its rhythms, cars and people and lives intersecting and separating in patterns too complex to track. 6 months later, Vincent made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. He started the process of legitimizing his operations, slowly divesting from the illegal activities that had built his empire and investing in legal businesses that could sustain his organization without violence. It was a years-long project, complicated and risky, but Lena had shown him that there were other ways to have power, other legacies worth building. A year after the gallery opening, Vincent proposed. Not with a dramatic public gesture, but with a quiet moment in the penthouse after Lena had spent the day painting. He got down on one knee in front of her easel, holding a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, and asked her to marry him. She said yes without hesitation, paint still on her fingers, tears streaming down her face. You're sure? Vincent asked. Sure you want to tie yourself to me permanently? To my world and my past and my complicated future? I've been sure since August 14th. Since you asked me about Gatsby and actually listened to my answer, I've just been waiting for you to catch up. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony attended by Vincent's lieutenants, Lena's family from Iowa, and a handful of friends who understood the complicated balance they'd created. Tommy served as best man and gave a speech about how Lena had made Vincent human again. Lena's sister served as maid of honor and cried through the entire ceremony. During their vows, Vincent promised to always see her, to never let her be invisible again, to build a life together that honored both who they were and who they wanted to become. Lena promised to call him on his bullshit, to keep painting truth even when it was uncomfortable, to love him through the violence and the peace, the crisis and the calm. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Vincent's world didn't allow for those. There were still threats, still complications, still moments when the darkness of his past threatened to overwhelm the light they were building together. But they faced it as partners, as equals, as two people who'd chosen each other with full knowledge of the cost. 2 years after the wedding, Lena had her first major exhibition in a prestigious downtown gallery. Her work had evolved, still emotional, still honest, but now infused with a complexity that came from living at the intersection of violence and beauty, power, and vulnerability. Critics called it raw and unflinching. Vincent called it perfect. 3 years after the wedding, Vincent completed the legitimization process. His empire still existed, still generated wealth and power, but it operated within legal boundaries now. It had taken longer than expected, cost more than he'd anticipated, and required sacrifices he'd never thought he'd make. But Lena had been beside him through all of it, reminding him why it mattered, what they were building together. On their 5th anniversary, they stood on the balcony of the penthouse, the same balcony where Vincent had watched Lena leave in a red dress, and realized he couldn't let her disappear. The city stretched out below them, changed and unchanged, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. Do you ever regret it? Lena asked, giving up the power, the control? I didn't give it up. I transformed it. There's a difference. Semantics. Truth. Vincent pulled her closer. I have more power now than I ever did before. Just a different kind. The kind that comes from building something legitimate, from having someone to build it with. That's surprisingly philosophical for a former crime lord. I had a good teacher. She reads romance novels and paints emotions and taught me that strength isn't about never showing weakness. It's about being vulnerable enough to let someone see your whole truth. I did say that, didn't I? You did. Changed my whole perspective. Lena was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm pregnant. Vincent froze. What? I'm pregnant. About 8 weeks. I wanted to wait until I was sure before telling you, but I can't keep it secret anymore. We're going to have a baby, Vincent. He turned her to face him, saw the mix of joy and terror in her eyes that probably mirrored his own expression. We're going to have a baby, he repeated. Are you okay? I know we talked about it eventually, but I wasn't sure if you were ready. Vincent kissed her, cutting off her nervous rambling. When he pulled back, he was smiling. I'm terrified, I'm thrilled, I'm completely unprepared. But Lena, I want this. Want to build a family with you. Want to give our kid the kind of life where they're seen and valued from day one. What if I'm a terrible mother? You'll be amazing. You see people, really see them. Our kid will never feel invisible. What if they inherit your tendency toward dramatic gestures? Then we'll have our hands full, but we'll handle it together. They stood on the balcony as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. Below them, the city moved through its evening rhythms, oblivious to the fact that Vincent Moretti, who'd once ruled through fear and violence, was about to become a father. 9 months later, their daughter was born, a tiny, perfect creature with Lena's eyes and Vincent's stubborn chin. They named her Elena, after Lena's mother, and from the moment Vincent held her, he understood a new kind of vulnerability. This was what real power felt like, not controlling territory or commanding respect or instilling fear, but holding this fragile life in his arms and knowing he'd do anything, sacrifice anything, burn the whole world down if necessary to keep her safe. She's perfect, Lena whispered from the hospital bed, exhausted but glowing. She is. She's absolutely perfect. Think we can do this? Raise a kid in our complicated world? I think we can do anything together. And he meant it. They'd already done the impossible, turned invisibility into visibility, violence into peace, isolation into partnership. Raising a child seemed almost simple by comparison. Almost. The years that followed were full of chaos and joy in equal measure. Elena grew into a curious, fearless child who inherited her mother's artistic talent and her father's strategic mind. She painted elaborate murals on her bedroom walls and negotiated bedtime extensions with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. Vincent transformed completely. The ruthless crime lord who'd once ordered executions without hesitation became the father who sat through endless tea parties, who learned to braid hair, who read bedtime stories with different voices for each character. His empire continued to thrive, now fully legitimate, and he built it into something Elena could inherit with pride instead of shame. Lena continued to paint, her work growing more acclaimed with each exhibition, but her favorite pieces were the ones she created with Elena, collaborative paintings that hung throughout the penthouse, evidence of their partnership, their creativity, their love. On Elena's 5th birthday, as they celebrated in the penthouse surrounded by family and friends, Vincent found himself standing at the same window where everything had started. Tommy appeared beside him, older now, with gray at his temples. You did good, boss. Built something real. We all did. Couldn't have done it alone. Still, 5 years ago, if someone had told me you'd be here, legitimate business, happy marriage, kid's birthday party, I would have said they were crazy. 5 years ago, I would have agreed with you. What changed? Vincent watched Lena across the room, helping Elena open presents, laughing at something their daughter said. Even after all this time, she took his breath away. Even after all this time, he saw her, really saw her, with the same intensity as that night in the red dress. I stopped being blind, Vincent said. Stopped pretending that power and control were enough. Started paying attention to what actually mattered. And what's that? Being seen, being known, building something with someone who sees all of you and loves you anyway. Tommy nodded slowly. Think that's what we all want, really. To be seen, to matter. Yeah. Took me long enough to figure it out. Lena caught Vincent's eye across the room, smiled that smile that was just for him. He smiled back, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The empire he'd built, the violence he'd left behind, the complicated journey from invisibility to visibility. All that mattered was this moment, this family, this life they'd created together against all odds. Later that night, after the party ended and Elena was asleep, Vincent and Lena stood on the balcony one more time. It had become their ritual over the years, standing here at the end of the day, looking out over the city, reconnecting after the chaos of life with a young child. "Do you remember the night I almost got on that plane?" Lena asked. "Every detail. It's burned into my memory. What would you have done if I'd actually left? If I hadn't turned around?" Vincent considered the question seriously. "I would have let you go. Wouldn't have chased you to Seattle. Would have accepted that I'd missed my chance." "Really? That doesn't sound like you." "The old me would have followed. Would have used every resource I had to track you down, convince you to come back. But that would have been about control, not love. You deserved the choice. Deserved to make your own decision without me manipulating the outcome. I'm glad I stayed." "So am I. Best decision you ever made." "Second best. The best decision was wearing that red dress." Vincent laughed. "That dress changed everything." "It didn't change anything. It just made you see what was already there. I was always visible, Vincent. You just weren't looking." She was right. Lena had been there all along, moving through his space, reading his books, humming her sad songs, loving him quietly while he looked right through her. The red dress hadn't transformed her. It had transformed his perception, forced him to acknowledge what he'd been avoiding for 11 months. "I'm looking now," he said. "And I'll never stop looking. You and Elena, you're everything I see when I look at my life. Everything that matters, everything worth protecting and building and fighting for." "That's very romantic for a former crime lord. I learned from the best. Those romance novels you read taught me a few things." "Such as?" "That grand gestures matter. That vulnerability is strength. That sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is admit they were wrong and try to do better. And you've done better. Built something beautiful out of all that violence and control. We built it together. None of this works without you." Lena leaned against him, and they stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights blur and shift in the darkness. Somewhere below them, Chicago continued its endless rhythm. People loving and fighting and building and destroying, all of them trying to make sense of the complicated business of being human. Vincent had spent most of his life trying to control that chaos, to impose order through force and fear. But Lena had taught him something better. She'd taught him that the most beautiful things emerged from embracing the chaos, from being vulnerable enough to let someone else in, from transforming invisibility into visibility through the simple act of paying attention. That red dress had started everything, but love had sustained it. Love and honesty and the willingness to choose each other every single day, even when it was hard, even when Vincent's past threatened to overwhelm their present. As the night deepened and the city settled into its late-hour rhythms, Vincent held Lena close and felt something settle in his chest. Peace. Contentment. The quiet certainty that he'd found what he'd been looking for without knowing he was searching. He'd found home. Not in marble floors or bulletproof windows or an empire built on violence, but in the arms of a woman who'd been invisible for too long and had taught him that real power came from being seen, being known, being loved completely. And for Vincent Moretti, former crime lord, current family man, forever changed by a quiet housekeeper in a red dress, that was everything. That was enough. That was the life worth living.